Hey students, I hope you're doing well and welcome back to another week. This week we are really diving into our profile essay. Now, if you're watching this lecture, I will have expected that you have already watched the video lecture from last week that introduces the profile essay and goes over the handout, as well as you've already watched the example and you've seen a really strong example of what a good profile essay looks like for this particular essay example. So let's talk about a few things. What is a profile essay? In simple terms, this refers to a very detailed description of a person, event, thing, or entity. The description for notable past USA presidents, well-known civil rights activists, an ancient city, etc. For the particular purposes of this essay, of course, you are going to be talking about a person. And more specifically, you're going to be talking about a person that you want to become one day or someone you want to be like. Consequently, as the name suggests, a profile essay is intended to create a detailed profile of that entity, event, process, offering the reader a comprehensive perspective and a chance to make informed judgments on the subject. This type of essay is not your average surface description of the subject in question. It is designed to answer questions that may arise in a bid to identify or describe something. To have a detailed description for the subject interest, you must have all the necessary information about it. Furthermore, we need to make sure this information is made presentable enough and doesn't raise room for confusion. So let's talk about the structure of this essay. Like every other essay, your profile essay is going to have an opening paragraph, the main body, and a closing paragraph. One thing that I want you to keep in mind is when describing someone, it is essential that we remember that every person deserves respectful treatment and manner of addressing. It would be an inappropriate act if you write something condescending about them. This is one among generally known but seldom used basic and tips. Withholding respect when you write about anyone makes your work invalid. And just a note on this, since you are writing about someone that you want to be like one day, it should be kind of expected that the way you're writing about them is respectful. But one thing that I want you to keep in mind, if you're sharing something about their life or a hardship they've been through or something personal, just always ask for permission. In the examples that you're going to see, some things about my dad are personal. He grew up really with not a lot, and that can be really personal and touchy for some people. And so just always ask that you can use the examples or use the things that you're writing about. So how do you even get started? The question most would like to ask is how to start a profile essay. This is expected since to carry out the task, you must know how to go about it. When writing a profile essay, ideally, you should read a few sample essays first, which is why we did our example essay earlier on in this week's lecture notes. This would allow not only familiarizing with the basic layout and important elements, but also taking the best from each of these and deciding on the structure you want to follow. So the first thing you're going to do is get the necessary information you need. And guys, that's going to come through interview. And we're going to talk about framework and how you're supposed to frame your questions later on. Make sure everything you're writing is valid and with deep respect, and then follow a sort of outline. Be organized in your thought, and we're going to talk more about that. So let's talk about organization. Any academic homework requires organization. There are two strategies for organizing a paper, namely thematic format and chronological. When you follow a thematic format, you are simply structuring your paper according to a specific theme. An individual's profile should be organized by experiences. For example, one paragraph may touch on their personal life while another focuses on their public life. That's thematic, or another word that we might be using is called logical organization. If you follow chronological order, early parts of the subject should come first and the later aspects should follow. Each paragraph needs to cover different aspects of the subject. So let's talk about interviewing for information. You can direct a conversation by asking questions designed to draw out the information you want. Guys, this is super important. Really, before you interview the subject, you should already have brainstormed and considered kind of what you want to write about. The idea behind this essay is that you're writing about somebody that you know deeply, right? Because if you want to be like that person, you should know them very well. For my dad, there's some character qualities about his life that mean a lot to me and that I really want to embody one day. So before I would go into that interview process, I already know, hey, my dad is a faithful guy. My dad is dependable. My dad is grateful. So I'm going to direct my questions based on those ideas. So for example, and we're going to talk about this in a little bit, but the body paragraph example that I'm giving you guys in this lecture is about his gratitude. And so I specifically said, Dad, what made you grateful? And then he started talking about his childhood and how he didn't grow up with a lot. And so he learned how to live large on very little. And so again, before you interview someone, you should already have ideas about what you want to write about. And when you have those ideas, those are going to frame your questions. One of the things that I see students run into a lot of times is they don't have an idea of what they want to write about. And so they just go into the interview saying, what's your favorite color? What's your favorite TV show? And guys, that doesn't have anything to do with our topic. So consider what you want to write about. Consider your framework, and that will shape the questions that you ask. You do so in an interview, a conversation with purpose. Let's say that one more time. Conversation with purpose. Interviews can help you get to know people, understand their perspectives, and discover what they know. You may want to use what you learn to profile the individuals interviewed. Other purposes for the interview include gathering expert information, collecting information, and assessing firsthand accounts. So here's that example that I'm talking about, my dad, and this is my introduction for this essay. He stands at 5'10", but his presence can take up an entire room. He has sharp, dark eyes that crinkle when he smiles. He has rancher's arms that are tan from the elbow down from days in the hot sun. His hair is thinning, but it's still jet black, and he'll never be seen out of a starched shirt and jeans. When I asked him if he needed dress shoes for my wedding day, he simply said, "Sis, I brought you into the world in boots. I think I'll give you away just the same if it's all right with you." He is who he is, and he makes no apologies for it. People say I remind them of him, and it always makes me smile a bit to think the best parts of me come from one of my favorite people. He's a rancher. He's an innovator of equine science. He's a pivotal community member of Lincoln County. He's a husband and a pop. However, to me, he's just dad. When I think of who I want to be remembered as, every quality of my dad comes to mind. His life has embodied gratitude, hard work, and a deep commitment to family. So let's talk about this introduction. This first sentence that's highlighted in this teal blue is your hook, okay? It immediately grabs the attention of the reader. And then what you see here for my background information is this deep description of him that really only I would know, right? It's something that I can see, that I notice. And I even include this really nice direct quote that kind of gives you a sense of who he is. And then when we go down to the thesis statement, it's very clear what I'm going to be talking about. His life has embodied gratitude, hard work, and a deep commitment to family. Those are what my 3 body paragraphs should be about, and in that order. So then let's take a look at an example body paragraph for this essay. When most look at my dad's childhood, they would see a lot of simplicity. But in talking to my dad, he marks those days with one word: gratitude. My dad grew up on a simple horse farm on Talent Road in Vail, North Carolina. He was surrounded by family members on all sides, and his cousins were built-in best friends. His childhood home had 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom, but there were 7 people that filled the walls: a dad who worked hard driving trucks and a mom who filled their days with love. We didn't have a lot. Sometimes I wonder how in the world they did it. I mean, we went to rodeos, we had animals, and we played recreation ball. We never went without. He credits his mom for most of the good things in his life. She was known for taking people in, giving them a hot meal, and sharing the little that their family had to offer. She gave until she couldn't give anymore. She was the best. When I think about all the life lessons I learned, most of them came from her. She was the definition of a mother's love. When he talks about his mom, his eyes sparkle with a tear that won't release and endless amounts of gratitude. I had it all when we didn't have much, he says. So let's take a look at this body paragraph and break it down a little bit. If we go back to the thesis statement, we can see that the very first topic that I'm going to be discussing is gratitude. And that directs this topic sentence. When most look at my dad's childhood, they would see a lot of simplicity, but in talking to my dad, he marks those days with one word, gratitude. So there's this very clear connection from the thesis to the topic sentence. Now I want you to see how I organize this. I'm addressing his childhood, which talks about his early days. And then I'm also talking about the theme that I talked about in my topic sentence, which is gratitude. These examples are very clear examples from his early days. You can see bits and pieces of his childhood. You can see the small home he lived in. You can see that his parents were blue collar people, but that his mom was super intentional in his life. And what I want you to know are these direct quotes that you can tell I got from an interview. We didn't have a lot. Sometimes I wonder how in the world they did it. I mean, we went to rodeos, we had animals, we played rec ball, we never went without. She was the best. When I think about all the life lessons I learned, most of them came from her. She was the definition of a mother's love. I had it all when we didn't have much. You see these very explicit ways that he's grateful, despite a childhood that, when you think about economically, just didn't have a lot. So what does that all lead to? So this week, here's what you need to be doing. You need to consider, who do you want to write about? Consider how you want to frame your essay. What is important to you about that person? Is it their story? And so you're going to be writing in this chronological format. Is it their character qualities and you're really going to emphasize that? Or is it one character quality? Is it that they have been loyal throughout their entire life and you're going to just talk about that consistently in an organized way? Consider the organization you want to use. Make it make sense, y'all, okay? You should not be talking about their current life in body paragraph 1 and their childhood in body paragraph 3. If your thesis sentence talks about gratitude, hard work, and faithfulness, then your paragraphs need to go in that order. Make it make sense. And then this should all lead to, consider the questions you need to ask to create your framework. Do not walk into that interview. Don't walk into that interview blind. Have an idea of the angle you want to go at. And as always, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Guys, you're doing a lot of work this week. You're going to be brainstorming, doing your own outline. I'm not requiring an outline this week. You should be talking to the person who you're writing about to make sure you have all the information you need for this paper, asking great questions. And then you're going to be brainstorming with your class in a discussion board. And you're also going to be submitting just your introduction in one body paragraph so I can make sure you're on the right track. All right, let's make it a great week and reach out if you have any questions.